My name is Jay Sugarman, and I want to welcome you to Innovation Showcase. The main purpose of this ongoing series is to inform viewers about exciting innovations and creative individuals across the fields of business, science, technology, education, and the arts. Today, via Zoom, we're fortunate to have as our guest Keegan Franck. Keegan is a ninth grader at Belmont High School. Last year, he entered the Young Inventor Challenge, hosted by the Chicago Toy and Game Fair, and won under the Best Game category for his engaging and strategy-based game entitled Endless. During the program, we'll learn how Endless came about and how it's played. We'll hear about some of Keegan's other games and how he goes about creating and designing his innovative efforts. Let's start by meeting Keegan and then finding out all about Endless and his game-making prowess. Welcome, Keegan. So delighted you're able to be here.
Jay, thank you for having me. It's great to be
No,
here.
first of all, congratulations on all the success you've had with Endless. Eager to hear much more about it and have you inform viewers. But before we jump right to that, I think it would also be of interest just to hear a little bit more about your background, perhaps interest in and out of schools, whatever you'd like to share, please.
Of course, I'm a rising ninth grader at Belmont High School, and my interests in school are history and science. Outside of school, I spend time with friends, creating games both with them and alone, and play some sports with my friends sometimes, and enjoy writing silly songs.
Great, great. How did your interest in gaming, creating games come about?
Yeah, so it was in third grade. We were learning math, and I was tired of doing just continuous review sheets for things I thought I already knew. And so I asked the teacher, is it okay if I make a game that my friends and I could play during math class, so long as the game is math related? And she's like, sure, go for it. So I came up with a game called Math Dungeon. It is a game where you go through a dungeon with your friends and solve math problems to defeat monsters. And the game was really fun to me and my friends. So we decided to make one together. And it was called Pocket Mobs after Minecraft, which we were all really into in third grade.
Mhm.
And it was a game where you would play against one other person uh, as a mob from Minecraft, which is a monster. And then you would play cards that are themed after the mob that you're playing and try to reduce your opponent's health to zero. And that was really fun. I enjoyed creating pocket mobs. We've been designing it for like 3 months back in third grade, and we kept it going for 3 months, and that was great. So yeah, and
Terrific.
then
And
sorry.
since then, how has your game development grown over the years, the different areas that you've been working on?
I've made a lot more games since then, and they've been varying in topic and just a lot of gameplay. So, some games like Endless are abstract strategy, and you move pieces and try and flip things over, and like sort of like chess or checkers. Some games are tile placement, where you have wooden tiles that you place adjacent to other tiles to gain benefits. And some of them are more like pocket mobs, where you try to combat the other player and reduce their health. There have been a lot of different goals and mechanics and objectives that have come into the games over the years.
How has your approach to developing the games developed over the years? What have you learned about game making that you've built on your initial efforts?
So, pocket mobs, when I made it back in third grade, was very just because I wanted to make the game and had an idea and just put it on paper and played it. And nowadays, when I try to create a game, I think about the mechanics and how they interact with each other and how that would impact player experience and how much time the game is going to take. So there's a lot more thought that goes into it um, now than back when I started making games.
Terrific. Well, let's hear a little bit more about Endless. How did this game come about? How did you approach it? What's the big picture? And then I know we're fortunate to have you give a little demonstration on how it works eventually.
Endless came about last year during February break when I decided to, over the course of a week, make a strategy game every day of the week. So Endless was day 3, I believe, and I made a little paper version of it, which was just a little circle that I had drawn on a sheet of paper and then cut out pieces for. And I thought the game was really interesting. And so I brought it over to my friend's house who lives across the street. And I'm like, hey, we should play this. And he's like, okay, sure, you made another game, great. And he absolutely destroys me. But I was like, that's really fun. I would like to play again. So I put it on cardboard using a laser cutter at my middle school
Hmm.
and just started messing with the rules and mechanics. And over the next couple months, it's become a much more refined game with some really cool interactions between players. And yeah, it's come a long way.
No, hearing you explain Endless and your approach to your earlier games tells me that you've learned at a really young age the whole importance of making prototypes and just jumping right in and then
Yes, that's
making
very important.
modifications as you go, versus I think a lot of people wait until they have the perfect idea before they even put, say, pencil to paper. But jumping in is something you
Yes.
started in third grade and have refined even that technique, it sounds like.
Yeah, jumping in and just putting whatever you have in your mind on paper is the most important thing you can do in game design because without it, you don't have a game. And it's hard to refine and make an idea better if you've never experienced it, never played it, and don't have much to go off of when improving it.
Right. Well, we're fortunate to have nearby the actual game, the
Yeah,
board. And as we switch to that, would you please explain just what went into the design that we're seeing on the screen now and how that modified from your initial effort, please?
yeah. So the original design was on paper, and this is on laser cut wood. And the pieces, the what goes like the components of the game actually haven't changed since the paper version, but what they do has in some ways. Um, so would you like me to explain how to play?
Please, that'd be wonderful to hear now.
Yeah. So this piece has 2 arrows on it. So when you spend your turn to move it, it moves 2 spaces like that. 1, 2. If it lands on another piece, it repeats its move.
Okay.
And this can repeat as many times as is needed until the piece finds an empty space. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, like that.
Okay. Got
Great.
it.
If it lands on an enemy piece, this one's shaded, these are outlined. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. It bounces like normal and flips the opposing piece over. If we repeat that, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, it skips the flipped over tile.
Uh-huh.
The board has shrunk 1 circle. The goal of the game is to flip over all of the opposing pieces on the outer ring of the board. In addition to moving a piece on your turn, you can also turn one piece around so it would move the other direction should you choose to move it again on the next turn.
Okay.
And this does not count as bouncing like that if it would go 1, 2. It only bounces if it ends its move on a piece as
Okay.
opposed to moving over it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
What's the inner circle for?
Yeah. So I'll get to that. First, let's cover setup because that does involve the inner circle.
Okay.
So when setting up the game, you put the 1 piece out of 7 that you have, which has 4 arrows, in the square part on the inner circle of the board.
All right.
Both players do that. And then you choose 4 pieces to be put on your shaded tiles on your side of the board. So this is
Mhm.
for the player with the shaded tiles, and this is for the player with the outline tiles.
Mhm.
And you can choose how you want to set them up in any combination of pieces, any variation of directions, anything. And then the other 2 go into these 2 circles. And these are your bank. So on your turn, you can move a piece, you can turn a piece around, or you can deploy a piece from your bank. So when you play a piece from your bank, you take it out of the bank and you put it on one of your shaded tiles, unoccupied, and either direction. And that would be your entire turn, no moving or turning anything.
Mm.
Um, these 2 can come out in any order, but the 4 has to come last. The 4 is sort of like a king in chess. When it's flipped over, when something lands on it, then the game is over for you. So your opponent wins when they flip your 4. So I could play this and this piece, and this would be over separate turns. But the 4 would come out last, and it's got unparalleled power and range. But if it's flipped over, my opponent wins immediately.
Mhm.
You are under no obligation to play anything from your bank, but if your opponent flips over your pieces before you played anything from the bank, the game ends.
Ah, okay. Another
So
way
there
to
is
play the
some
game.
strategy behind the timing. Do I want to deploy something from my bank to keep myself in the game, or do I want to try and make my current position on the board better for my current setup?
Great. Do you also create written directions for the game?
Yes, I do. I don't have them on hand with me.
Yeah.
But yes, they are. I do have some written rules that have been refined as well as the game has been iterated upon.
That's a wonderful overview. Could you share a little bit about how you got involved with the Young Inventor Challenge and that whole experience would be very interesting to hear.
Of course. So I was at PAX East in 2023, and brought Endless, which I had just made in February. PAX East is in March. To Unpub, which is an area where you can test your unpublished games with other game designers and people who want to test your games as well that aren't game designers. And I had met someone a year earlier who notified me about the Young Inventor Challenge, and I was intrigued, and so I was like, hey, might as well give it a shot.
Hmm.
So I went to their website and we filled out like the form and sent the tutorial video, and went to Chicago to pitch it in person
Ah,
to some game designers who are successful in the industry and that have been like judging the challenge.
hmm.
And they decided they liked it. And I was given the award of best game in the senior division, which I believe is over 13. Um, and yeah, that has opened a lot of doors for me. Um, I have talked with a couple publishers who have been
Mm.
interested in publishing the games and putting it on store shelves. And so that's been really exciting.
Yes.
As we speak, there are a couple requests pending. They're reviewing the game. So that's really exciting. Having winning the challenge has gotten me in touch with a bunch of people who I never thought I'd meet. Um, and that's been just a really great experience in general.
That's fabulous, fabulous. So the next steps are continuing to make contacts and seeing where things might end up.
Yeah, widening the network, meeting new people, and showing people who might be interested in the game, and seeing if they'd like to take it a couple steps further and bring it to more people.
Terrific, terrific. Um, Gonna share some other photos we have, and these are at PAX East, I think.
Yeah, this is an unpub. This is, I think, 2023. I did go again 2024, but this is some stuff I actually did submit to the Young Inventor Challenge. Um, yeah, so that's me explaining Endless to a couple of new players who have just decided on their setups and put some pieces in the bank. You can see some of the other games in the background. from a
Mhm.
bunch of other game designers who are testing their games as well.
What was some of the
And
feedback from this experience?
feedback has been very positive. Um, People have really enjoyed the simplicity of the game. The rules are quite easy to learn. It takes around 2 minutes to explain, and people have enjoyed the depth of the strategy as well. How the pieces can chain off of each other and bounce off in some unexpected ways. Um, some interesting feedback I've gotten is that the game doesn't have a theme. So a couple of themes I have been thinking of that have been floating around in my head have been like having the board be a planet and having the pieces be
Hmm,
asteroids orbiting the planet. Or
nice.
there was one about fainting goats, where the pieces are fainting goats, and when they land on each other, the opposing goats flip over, they faint, and the goats are kind of polite, so they step over the other fainting goats that have already fainted. So that would explain the shrinking board.
Mm.
Um, Feedback has been great. I've been really enjoying talking to playtesters who have been testing the game and just hearing what they have to say about it.
Yeah, again, that's another key thing hearing from inventors over time is to get that feedback and then reiterate and modify whatever you have and just go on to a bigger and better version, which is advice that you learned at, as I said, an early age and have really taken to it. Here we have another location, I think a little more local, Omar's in
Yeah, this is
Lexington.
Omar's World of Comics in Lexington. Uh, every first Thursday of the month, a bunch of game designers from the local Boston area meet up here and show off their games. So these are a couple playtesters playing Endless for the first time and pondering some strategies and thinking about it. And you can see my head just a little bit there in the background as I'm teaching
Oh
some other
yeah.
people the game. Um, but yeah, Omar's is great. It's definitely a good thing to reach out to local game design groups if you're interested in making a game and just test your ideas there at whatever local meetings are happening because there are almost always local meetings in your area. So,
What do you hope people appreciate about Endless and perhaps take away from playing it?
something I enjoy about Endless and hope other people do as well is the new ideas of strategy and the kind of spatial manipulation that comes with it, where
Hmm.
the board is shrinking and tiles are being deleted and flipped over. And that's just a kind of spatial reasoning that I haven't encountered in many other strategy games. So I think that's good. And that I hope it opens people's minds to this kind of new form of strategy that they get to experience and try to discover and figure out and apply new strategies and concepts to. So that's something I hope people take away is a new kind of experience with strategy and like spatial reasoning that they
Nice.
haven't really encountered before.
Mhm. Well, look forward to continuing to hear about more about endless developments. But in time remaining, would like to move on and hear about a couple of your current games that you've been working on. One is Skillybop that looks a little different than Endless.
Yeah, so Skilly Bop, named by my friends, is a outdoor sport where you have two end zones, sort of like football, and two balls, one for each team. And the teams are of even number, and it's a game about trying to get your ball to the opponent's end zone as they're trying to do the exact same thing.
Hmm.
And in Skilly Bop, there are no breaks. So if you miss a pass and your ball drops, you've got to restart. And the enemy team is still trying to get their ball over to your team's end zone. So it's a very action packed game with a lot of good strategy that I have enjoyed playing with my friends.
Terrific.
And yeah, so that's Skilly Bop. If you tag the opposing player with the ball, they've also got to restart. So that there's a mix of aggression and defensive play that yeah, it's been really fun.
Just very briefly, like what have been some of the modifications you've made to Skillybop the more you've played it?
A bunch of rules about random things that come up, like are you allowed to throw your ball at another player's ball during a pass? So a bunch of niche little occurrences come up, and they require new rules to be patched to make sure the game is fun and fair for everybody.
Terrific, terrific. Well, another one, love to hear about Wayward.
Yeah, Wayward is a word game where you make a path starting in the corner of a grid of letters. You make a continuous path using each letter once, to try and fill out a phrase that has been kind of scrambled and laid out in a path inside the grid. So, Wayward, this is the digital version. It gives you a hint, and you can see the little like spaces where you put the letters once you fill it out. You start in a corner and you make a path along the letters and try and figure out what the phrase is. And it's quite difficult, but it's also very fun. And Wayward has also been in the local newspaper in Belmont, where I am, the Belmont Voice.
Mm,
And I'm actually hoping to get it in there again sometime soon. So that's another thing for me to look forward to.
terrific.
Um, yeah, and it's been enjoyable seeing that go places as well.
I'm fascinated by the range of games you've developed and continue interested in developing. How do you go from one field, area, discipline to the other? What leads you to latch on to a new idea?
That's a good question. So often I move to a new category when I feel another one has either been exhausted, or more likely, I just come up with a new idea. Maybe I've seen something, like I made a game called Rooted after I saw some mushrooms growing out, and I just said like it'd be really cool if I made a game about my mycelium network and stuff like that. So when I get inspiration from the environment around me, I often come up with a set of mechanics that kind of fits the idea or the theme, and see where that takes me. And often that's going to be much different than a lot of the other games I've made because of the nature of the topic. It's just a different topic. So it's going to have some different mechanics. And sometimes I'll be thinking about board games and I'll come up with a new mechanic that doesn't quite have a theme yet. And so in that case, that's where Endless came from, where I thought of the mechanic of bouncing and flipping pieces. And then I actually haven't come up with a theme that's yet been applied to Endless. Um, but that those are the kind of games where the mechanics and the gameplay takes precedent over a kind of artistic feel of the game.
And I know viewers and others can go to your website, Cardboard Box Studios, to find out more about both of those games and I guess updates on future endeavors.
Yeah, so the website is a work in progress and it's going to be updated continually. Again, that's cardboardboxstudios.com. And I've got some of my games up there. The ones that have been, they've progressed more, and I've images of them to kind of share with
Mhm.
people who go to the website. And the website will be continually updated. And so if people want to check in on that, that'd be great.
Well, we'll have that listing in the credits so people can take note as well. What advice would you give, or do you give others who are interested in gaming, think they have an idea, but just don't know where the next steps might be?
The most important advice I can give you is to get it out of your head and put it on something and play it, because that will take you places that you can't get when in your head. And that if it's not been made yet, you can't improve on it as efficiently. And it's also just a lot of fun to play something you've made and improve upon it and try to get it out there and watch other people play it. So the most important advice I can give you is get it out of your head and play it.
Terrific, terrific. Again, back to the idea of just starting and see where that takes you. I think is good advice for gaming and so many other
Yes, it
areas
applies
in
in many
our
other different places.
daily life. Just to get started, and you'll be surprised of the progress you'll make and the ideas you'll come up with, as you know all too well, once you just dip your toe in and try things out for sure. Any
Exactly.
upcoming areas that either you're working on or that you might want to work on that you haven't explored yet?
A couple games I am working on is Rooted, which is the game I mentioned about growing a mycelium network. You place tiles adjacent to other tiles, and you, depending on what tiles you connected with the other tiles, you get different points. And the goal of the game is to get the most points. There's a game called Republic, which is about growing a civilization and researching different technologies and outpacing the other players' civilizations.
Wow.
And my latest one is not yet named. I'm going to be having some friends name it hopefully tonight. And it's about it's like connect the dots, but you play cards, and so you're trying to connect different dots based on the cards you have in your hand. And you grow the board by placing tiles, and you shrink it by removing the dots.
That's great. What I really enjoy is not only hearing you explain your process, but the enjoyment, the playfulness that you bring to it.
Thank you.
Again, that seems to be a sign of successful inventors I've had the opportunity to talk with over the years is they really enjoy and are open to just playing with ideas and not being focused on the right answer and just enjoying that experience. And it sounds like you bring it and you share it and make it contagious to others as well.
Well, thank you.
How can viewers and others, in addition to going to the website, which we'll list, perhaps get in touch with a question or follow-up information if they so choose?
Yeah, of course. You can email me at info@cardboardboxstudios.com. There's also a button at the bottom of my website page where you can just click a button and it will load an email page for you to type something and send it to me. So that would be, I think, the number one recommended way of reaching out to me and getting in touch.
Terrific, terrific. Well, Keegan, unfortunately, we've come to the end of the program. Want to thank you again so much for taking the time to be here. Fascinating to hear not only about Endless, but maybe even more so, your approach to gaming, developing, just playing with ideas is a really inspiration for all of us. So continued success with all upcoming and future endeavors, please.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Jay. I really enjoyed being here.
Wonderful. Also want to thank those of you watching for joining us and hope you'll be able to tune in next time.